Seems here in hip-hop, if you can call it that Drake for the most part has been extremely well preserved and protected. No matter how goofy some of the things have come out the closet about Mr. Drake, somehow he's been able to maintain the course and still move up as far as relevancy in hip-hop. Now, here's the thing, let's go back in the past for a little bit here, right? When hip-hop initially started, for the most part, it was the people CNN, as Chuck D eloquently put it. But as time progressed around 92, 93, you started to see things change a little bit. You started to see groups like Public Enemy kind of fall back a little bit. Some of the Poor Righteous Teacher stuff fall back as well. Moving forward into a different genre, what you would deem is quote-unquote gangster rap or full-fledged gangster rap. Elements of gangster rap have always been in hip-hop. But moving forward, you had cats like Snoop Dogg, and then you had the Tupacs and Biggie. Now, here is what is interesting. Tupac represented pretty much the voice of the people, something that could not be duplicated or imitated by the corporate agenda, that is. They've tried successfully with prior incarnations of a Drake. We have to look at it as so. For instance, you have Vanilla Ice, who apparently was not writing his rhymes. Now, this does go back to the colonization of black music, where white artists or non-black artists would basically be the face, and then the black artists or the black writers would be behind the scenes doing all of the work, coming up with all of the creative material, all of the creative ideas, basically managing the creative process. But there would be a white face, like I stated before, on top of that black talent. The problem with Vanilla Ice, as they tried to appropriate hip-hop at that time with Vanilla Ice, the problem with him, he was so goofy, and some of the moves he's made or made at the time were so goofy and corny that on average, for the most part, the general consensus in hip-hop was to reject him and his high top, that is. But once things started falling out of the closet about ghostwriters, that is what really topped it off as far as damaging his career. So moving forward, you had other strange incarnations that tried to come in and counter hip-hop, the black element in hip-hop. Then you had Marky Mark. Again, this was by Jimmy Iovine. He tried to look for the white savior. They had been looking for the white savior or the non-black savior in hip-hop for quite some time. Marky Mark, he kind of had the street edge about him, given that he is from Boston, you know, the rough parts of Boston, got into a lot of fights when he was younger, but the music was corny, so they weren't able to appropriate hip-hop with a Marky Mark. Now, after the deaths of Tupac and Biggie, now those two black saviors in hip-hop, the two black pillars in hip-hop, have been removed under suspicious circumstances. The culture shifted forward. Now you had people kind of duking it out for remnants of the throne these two individuals had. You had the East Coast still trying to claim some things. You had the West Coast still trying to hold up what they could. And then you had the influx of Southern artists come in. Now, introducing into the rap game, you had an Eminem. Eminem at the time was the closest thing for the establishment when it comes to appropriating hip-hop. It was interesting when Eminem hit the scene at the time, because the way he was marketed, he came across as a goofy, happy rapper, almost like a Freddie Got Fingered type rapper. Of course, though, he had the grounding and the solidification with the co-signature of Dr. Dre, one of the most heavier names in hip-hop. So that gave him some credibility amongst urban kids or urban individuals. Eminem continued forward. The thing about Eminem, though, even though he had controversy surrounding his past and some of the recordings he did, and the fact that when he got into it with Benzino, even though all of these things did occur, for the most part, one thing about Eminem, he gave props to the black artists, the black forefathers of hip-hop. He was always giving praise to the Nas's, the Tupacs, the Andre 3 Stacks, the Jay-Z's. He always gave praises to these guys. So there wasn't a complete colonization of rap music. It was very interesting with Eminem. The industry wanted him to be the complete colonizer of rap music, but this was something he did not want to do because he had too much respect for the art itself. Then on top of that, Eminem falls into a depression with the drugs and everything and losing his friends, so he falls back and disappears. There was a void there, for the most part, that Eminem had left with his absence. Even though you had 50 Cent running around, doing things here and there. 50 Cent, we can arguably say he was, ever since Get Rich or Die Trying, he had been on the decline. Plus him telling Jimmy Iovine on the Smile record, I told Jimmy Iovine's ass to shut the fuck up. The guy who is running Interscope, the overseer of your label and your crew and pretty much your career, yes, that is going to affect your career musically. And ever since those types of moves and 50 Cent not jumping on board to promote the Beats by Dre headphones, starting his own SMS audio, these types of things did agitate Jimmy Iovine, as he told 50 Cent to his face that he did not like 50 Cent. So when 50 Cent made these miscalculated moves, even though he could have filled the void, possibly, when it came to the culture that Eminem had left. But for the most part, you can not only say that 50 Cent was slightly blackballed, but his music for the most part had not been evolutionary. Now enter Drake. Drake has the mindset of a colonizer, if you think about it. He has been able to suppress black artists, meanwhile making sure the funds that he is accumulating within this genre stay within his Jewish Italian lineage. This is not anything against Jews or Italians, but you have to look at Drake's inner circle. His main go-to guy is 40. It's a Jewish guy. His inner circle is the Jewish Italian lineage. His outside secondary, second-tier circle, those who work up under him, the OVO sweatshop, primarily black artists, black talented artists. In fact, Drake has had the mindset of a slave master. If any of these black talented artists decide to make moves to try to get from up under him, or at least try to come out of Toronto without being associated with Drake, he goes out of his way to stop that, basically trying to shoot the slave before he gets off the plantation. What is interesting though, Drake is by far the most corporate of all the rappers, and what has taken place was a de-evolution in hip-hop ever since your Rakim and Big Daddy Kane days, ever since your King T days, ever since your Ice-T days, ever since your Ice Cube days, Tupac and Biggie days, and your early Nas days. Now for the black rapper, the traditionally black rapper, its image has been a regressive image. Meanwhile, the others, i.e. Eminem, Mac Miller, even at one point in time they promoted MGK very heavily, these rappers have been seen as bringing something of substance to the scene that the quote-unquote traditional black rapper had not. It's the same thing with Macklemore. Even though it's clear to a degree, Macklemore praises the culture a lot more overtly than some of his white counterparts. So what you're seeing is the removal of the black MC traditionally from the forefront of hip-hop, at least when it comes to intellect. Rhythm, sound, beat, what's knocking, we always had it, that is. But when they place somebody like Drake on top of everything else, and also he had been able to make the connections with Jay Prince to go ahead and give him that grounding, that solidification, i.e. similar to what Eminem had to do with Dr. Dre, it also gave him more of an edge, even though his actions and his behavior had dictated the fact that he could possibly be a quote-unquote goofy or genuinely a corny individual. So moving forward, Drake hits the scene. He releases So Far Gone. It is deemed an underground classic. Now, what was needed to do to make sure Drake had been seen as a possible viable artist or a viable contender for the throne in hip-hop, he was associated routinely with a J. Cole, who has proven himself to be a talented lyricist, a formidable foe when it comes to his pen game on the microphone. There had been an artificial duality created between J. Cole and Drake. Think of it similar to how Jay-Z and Nas are always brought up, or how Biggie and Pac are always brought up. So that kind of gave him some of that energy that he was a credible MC moving forward. Now, there was a chink revealed in the armor of the corporation of Drake, the facilitators behind Drake, the manpower behind Drake, moving from So Far Gone to Thank Me Later. Artistically, it was not the same vibe or energy, that is. J. Cole, on the other hand, explained why his first album sounded the way he did. He acquiesced to the corporations that wanted him to do these popcorn bubblegum hits. He said that wasn't him. He even did a song where he's apologizing to Nas about how he had got in the way of his own artistic creative energy and he allowed other people to control him. What took place after Thank Me Later with Drake, he acquired a new team of writers. The corporation or the entities behind Drake made sure he received the top tier writers, whether that's through the Young Money label or through Birdman within the OVO Sweatshop, to create an album like Take Care, which for the most part was The Weeknd's album. You have to ask yourself, who provided Drake with these writers, and why is it so important to make sure the image of Drake remains at its top tier level, or at least have Drake as the face of hip hop? Similar to when Obama came into presidency, the establishment needed to dabble a little bit in black blood to carry out the agenda. Having Obama go back into Africa, recolonizing Africa, and setting up AFRICOM was the idea. They needed a brown face. It would have looked too suspicious if AFRICOM was set up under a Hillary Clinton, or the recolonization of Africa would have been done through a Hillary Clinton. Although she still played a role in it, it still would have looked suspicious if it was a white face taking out Gaddafi. There would have been too much of an uproar. There was a slight uproar, but not as much because it was a brown face behind it. You have to keep in mind, once we had got a black president, all of a sudden we were going to war openly in Africa. Pretty suspicious. The establishment needed to definitely colonize hip-hop, so they needed to dabble a little bit more into the black blood, but still maintain the Jewish-Italian lineage. So if you look at it, juxtapose Drake, his popularity, next to other artists that are on the same level, what you would call traditional black artists. You can argue you have Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole. Outside of that, for the most part, your average traditional black rapper sounds like they are a part of the Mumble Club. And there is a conspiracy. You have to look at it as so. There is an agenda. The traditional full-blooded black rappers sound idiotic. They sound regressive. A lot of people are saying there's room in the culture. It's just expanding. No, it's not. It's digressing. It's devolving. There's no excuse for that. You have black rappers that don't want to freestyle. You have black rappers that can barely string a sentence together. You have black rappers that can't talk about anything else outside of mumbling, popping perks, selling perk, drinking lean. But meanwhile, the face of rap music, the ultimate G.O.D. of rap music, is a Drake. Even though Drake is by far the most corporate rapper out of any of them, he is the most well put together rapper. He is a much more successful Vanilla Ice. It's that simple. He doesn't write his rhymes. You have to go back through his catalog and question which album did he actually write? What songs did he actually write? But because of his bloodline and background, he has been excused from the table of discussion. If this was any other rapper, if this was a Tupac, if this was a Biggie, or even if this was a 50 Cent, or hell, even if it was a T.I., then automatically they would have been ejected from hip-hop. No questions. But somehow the industry and his handlers have made sure Drake has been excused from that discussion. Even though there is an undercurrent of true hip-hop heads and rap fans in general that are like, yo, what is good? Understanding that certain moves have been made, just like the takedown of Meek Mill. Still, Meek Mill made a dumb move when it came to attempting to expose Drake and not having any arsenal in the tank to counter the onslaught that was to come. But what Meek Mill represented was the traditional rapper with the street-wise intelligence. Going back to your Nas's, not saying lyrically he's on par with Nas, but still the same street-wise intelligent or the street wisdom dude. Going back to your Jadakisses and Beanie Siegel. Right now, you could say we don't have that energy in hip-hop. We don't have that energy in mainstream rap. We have trappers. There's a difference. Cats that are only specifically talking about dope and cocaine. But we don't have the street-wise rapper. We don't have the Jadakisses. Meek Mill represented that, and what was to become a movement again back in hip-hop. Meek Mill was the setup guy, G Herbo was to come in next, and then so forth, moving on from that, bringing back that street energy, countering the Drake-ish energy we have clouding hip-hop and rap music. Because under the Drake-ish energy, the so-called perceived street guys, even on the street level, are the young thugger dudes that are harmonizing somewhat to a degree like Drake, but they're not coming across as the traditional street-savvy rapper. So Drake making a move to make sure that energy, or the people behind him, or the handlers in the industry, made sure that street energy has been taken out of the game. French Montana touched on it briefly that the industry right now is not so much into the streetwise rapper. And other rappers have said the same thing. So right now, Drake has been positioned to be the overlord and the overseer of hip-hop. This is why he has come after Jay-Z countless of times. Jay-Z is the last facilitator of that streetwise energy on such a big level. He is the only full-blooded black rapper that is the counter to Drake at this point in time. So you have to ask yourself, why has Drake been positioned here? Why has he been given so many excuses? Any other rapper that would have met the same type of problems that Drake has met would have been done. They would have been ejected from the game. But somehow, each time Drake has been exposed, each time certain things have come out, the industry makes sure Drake is protected. Way more to a degree than they did Eminem. Far more. Drake's inner circle is Jewish Italian. His second tier, the people that work for him, his sweatshop, all black talented musicians that are not given their proper dues or credit publicly. Drake has routinely discredited and not credited certain black artists that actually work up under him. And with Drake, what you do see is the colonization of rap music and hip hop. That is exactly what he represents.